year of Hempfest. We've been in this park for 25 years now, and we have seen all sorts of change happen in that 28 years. I started coming here in 2011, and I actually helped escort my boss at the time, Representative Mary Lou Dickerson, who was the state legislator who introduced what became I-502 here in Washington State, one of the first states to legalize marijuana. And the next year, I came back, and we had what was known as the Great 502 debate, which is funny to think back on how things have changed since then. I obviously was a supporter of 502 when it first came out and when it went through the legislature, but as we saw it come to the initiative process, it changed, and things like home grow was taken out, and DUI penalties were put in for marijuana users. And for me, when we're adding new laws on the books to penalize cannabis users, that's where I draw the line on legalization. As you know, we were told at the time, pass it now and fix it later. And here we are, 7 years later, with the only state without home grow marijuana provisions. We also have not fixed the DUI provision. We also have not fixed access for patients. There are people in this state who cannot get the medicine that they need because they either can't afford it or the products they used to rely on when we had a medical market no longer exist in this new regulated terrain. In 2013, I came and I talked to you all about the marijuana prisoners who were being prosecuted on the federal level for following state law. People like Richard Floor and Chris Williams, Jerry Duvall, Aaron Sandusky, Jason Nelson. These were people who were following the law, had permits from their regulatory agencies, and the feds said it's illegal and we're going to take you to prison. And some of these people are still in prison today, serving time, while the rest of the industry is getting to grow and flourish and succeed. The following year after that, I came in 2014 to talk to you all about what we were going to do on the federal level to stop this from happening. And what we did was we passed the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment. And this was a great solution to the problem because it said, all right, Department of Justice, we're going to give you your funding to fight the war on drugs, but you cannot spend a single cent to interfere in state legal medical marijuana programs. The Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment has been passed year after year by Congress. Even though some call it a do-nothing Congress, they've passed that Rohrabacher-Farr protection for medical marijuana patients every year since 2014. It has been signed into law by both President Obama and President Trump, which tells us where the country stands on medical marijuana. We know also that law has since been extended to help provide protection to all state legal cannabis states. The following year after that, I came to talk to you about safe, affordable access and how they were trying to merge the medical marketplace into 502 and how patients were afraid that they were going to lose access. You see, this was something brought up when we had this great 502 debate back in 2012, but I didn't really think that patients would actually lose access to their medicine when it became legal, but that's exactly what happened. And the following year after that, I came to talk about how even when we lost access to medical marijuana, we were able to still break ground by adding PTSD as a qualifying condition to our law, and by being the first state in the nation to fully decriminalize a cannabis product from the State Controlled Substances Act. That was the Cannabis Health and Beauty Aids products. And now we've seen on the federal level, hemp decriminalized, pulled completely from the Controlled Substances Act. That started here with the model of Cannabis Health and Beauty Aids in Washington State. And every year, I tell you about how we're still fighting for civil rights. How people are still criminals. Their records haven't been expunged. You look at me and you think, she can't be a criminal, right? Well, I've been busted for pot. That's how I got started in this movement. And until I'm no longer having to mark a box on a form saying I'm a criminal, it's not really legal, right? And we know that there are still those prop prisoners out there. Luke Scarmazzo is serving a 20-year sentence for state legal medical marijuana. Aaron Sandusky serving a 10-year mandatory minimum sentence. Jerry Duvall serving a 10-year mandatory minimum sentence. Jerry Duvall is a dual organ transplant recipient who is growing marijuana for himself and is still locked up in federal prison, serving time for this plant, while this industry flourishes around you. And where do you see these folks talking about that? People are losing their jobs, they're losing their housing, they're still being denied student loans because of cannabis. Just yesterday in Oregon, a mother turned herself into the jail, charged with criminal neglect for feeding her child CBD oil for her cancer. Her child has been stripped from her and put into foster care in Oregon, where you can walk into a store and buy it off the street. This mother just surrendered herself to jail yesterday and was put through the court system. And there's mothers like me. I'm a medical cannabis patient myself. I need this to be able to be healthy and function as much as I do. The alternatives for me are handfuls of pharmaceuticals that don't work and make me very sick. And imagine what that's like when you're a pregnant woman and your choice is continue using the medicine you know that works, or switch to pharmaceuticals that you know are going to poison your baby, or stop using it altogether and hope that you can survive. This is reality for people in this country still to this day. And even once I gave birth to my child having used cannabis, then I had to fight to be able to have the right to breastfeed my child, because they wanted to stop me from being able to do that because of the cannabinoids in my system. Even though all of the medical experts have said that is the best course for me. I had the National Perinatal Association and the National Advocates for Pregnant Women stand up for me, and yet still the hospitals tried to deny me the right to breastfeed my son. And we have medical refugees who still are moving to states where it's legal so that they can have access, because there's 3 states left without any medical marijuana whatsoever. Idaho, Nebraska, and Kansas. They're the last 3 holdouts. We need to help our brothers and sisters in Idaho, Nebraska, and Kansas, because until they have access, it's not legal anywhere else. I am so proud to see this industry blossoming the way that it has. But I want to see these folks step up with their time and their pocketbooks and stop worrying about regulation and start worrying about people who are losing their children and losing their homes and going to prison and dying there, frankly. It's time to do something different. So I have a few speakers to feature for you today. One of them is Colt DeMorris. He's from El Paso, Texas. He's the founder of El Paso NORML. He's very familiar with what happens due to prohibition and the violence that is caused by prohibiting marijuana and other drugs. He also has a front row seat to the immigration injustices that are happening on the border, and he personally has experienced the benefits of cannabis in his family and what happens when you don't have access to it. Welcome, Colt DeMorris, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Colt DeMorris, and I am the founder and director of the El Paso chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. My fight started in 2009. I watched my mother take her last breath from cancer, and I knew at that time that it was my duty to set out and make sure patients had safe access from where I'm from. I tried to start a NORML. I started the process of starting a NORML. I wanted to give the city of El Paso a voice in the fight in Texas. And when I started, I was married at the time. When I started, my wife was diagnosed with cancer, so I had to go through her fight for a little bit and let her go through treatment before I was able to kick it off. And once I was able to kick it off, that's when everything with her started getting bad, and I ended up watching her die over the length of 2 years. So my fight's always been to keep people out of jail and to give patients access. Right now, over the last 2.5 years, my city alone, by our local police department, has spent $465,000 arresting and booking misdemeanor cannabis offenses. And usually those offenses are under 3 grams. So people where I'm from are still getting arrested for joints, still getting arrested for, minuscule amounts. It is my duty to fight and try to stop these arrests from happening. So thank you guys for having me at Hempfest. Thank you guys for keep putting it on, and thank you for having me here. Thanks.
Thanks, Colt. Appreciate your story. We also have a young man here, Colton Turner. I know that there's a large stigma about youth using marijuana. And people don't always think about youth who might have very serious health challenges and might need marijuana. And they also don't see well-spoken, intelligent, young people who've used marijuana. And so I wanted you all to meet somebody who's a teenager who was actually exiled to Colorado to be able to use